and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Black, roll call.
Mayor Galbraith,
Here.
Vice Mayor White,
Here.
Councilmember Doring,
Here.
Councilmember Kroll is absent, and Councilmember Pitts is absent.
All right. We next turn to public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to us for no more than 3 minutes on matters not on our agenda. Please state your name and address.
Jeff Ellsworth, 1434 Sylvaner. While it's nice we have the distinction of being the first town in the region to have green bicycle safety lanes near a school zone, I think it's also important to note that we're also the first town in the region to allow a large-scale alcohol drinking and hospitality center that enters and exits directly through the school zone. I had a conversation with a woman from Las Vegas who said that even in that town of dubious distinctions, they would never allow something so, in her words, asinine. So on one side of the school zone, we have green safety bicycle lanes. On the other side of the school zone, in fact, entering and exiting through it, is a large-scale drinking establishment proposing to enter and exit 66,000 wine-tasting hospitality visitors a year, plus winery trucks. I don't think that somebody's kid who gets injured or killed in an alcohol-related incident in that school zone will consider the green safety lanes as adequate mitigation, though we do appreciate having them there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? All right. Reports by staff and city council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. Let me begin with Ms. Phillips.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just a couple things to report on. One, we had our first ad hoc revenue source task force meeting. It was 2 hours, and we reviewed mostly the long-range financial plan. And the next meeting will be held on Friday, November 20th at 9 o'clock from 9 to 11 at the City Hall. And we'll be discussing the types of revenues that are accessible to a city, either through the ability of a city to collect them or items that could go to the voters.
All right.
And the second item is, after a long pause, from what I understand, the city held its first EOC drill. I had the managers and the department heads activate under a flooding scenario, activate the EOC. And although we might be short a few supplies, I have to tell you that your team did great. When you have talented people who are bright and work really well together, the vibrancy in the room, the energy, and the ability to respond under challenging circumstances, I think that you can be confident as we move forward together that if something were to happen, that this team can respond and be there for this community. So.
And EOC stands for Emergency Operations Center?
Yes, sir.
Not Equal Opportunity Commission.
There you go.
All right. Very good. Ms. Mitz?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to let everybody know at the next council meeting, which is November 24th, we are going to be doing a report on AB 1600, which is a mandated report, and it's to discuss the development impact fees. So it's an overview of what the beginning balance was for 14-15, if there's any changes in the fund, whether it's revenues coming in, expenditures going out, as well as what the ending balance is, and then upcoming projects that are in the near future. So that's going to be coming up. The report is available online, so you can go to the city's website as well. If you come by City Hall, we'll have it available for the public.
Okay. Ms. Black? Mr. Brown, I didn't mean to pass you over.
And nothing from the city attorney.
All right. Public Works Director, Mr. Palmer?
Yes, thank you. I would like to announce that this Thursday at 11 a.m. we will be having ribbon cutting for the green bike lanes that were just installed on Valley View Street.
Right.
So if people want to come out, they're welcome to. It's 11 a.m. at Valley View and Grace, and we'll meet at the corner there. So it's come see the Knights project. It's a great addition to the community.
Okay, Ms. Crichton, congratulations.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody, and especially the city manager, for giving me the opportunity. It's been an incredible experience so far, and I look forward to it in the future as library director. I just wanted to say that this Thursday will be our first Makers Club at the library with perler beads. They look like a lot of fun. I haven't had a chance to play with them yet, but a number of staff had. And that I hope you will enjoy Marvin Humphrey's exhibit at the library. He's always a lot of fun. And to give a big thank you for Friends and Foundation for sponsoring all of our programs at the library.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chief and Bowden?
Thank you. I just wanted to give you an update on a couple of things. Our newest officer started today, Stephen Coltrip. I'll bring him in a couple of months when he's done with his field training and have him do a formal swearing in and introduce himself to you. But you'll see him around town while he's in training for the next 3 months with his training officers. Also, I've been in contact with a company from Southern California that's going to loan us a static traffic camera that I can put on a pole outside the intersection of Main and Britain. It's going to not track, but it's going to take pictures of vehicles, give us an idea whether or not we can see license plates using it and whether or not we can tell what type of vehicle it is, so that if we get a call of a certain type of vehicle, we can go back and check the camera and see when and where that vehicle went, what time, and et cetera, when it left town. So hopefully we'll be able to move forward with that, but in the meantime, it's a free loaner, and we can keep it for about a month and practice with it.
Terrific.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Doring?
I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Mr. White? And the only community event that I would add is that this coming Sunday at Grace Episcopal Church at 10 a.m. there will be a dedication ceremony for the magnificent labyrinth that is just nearing final completion with remaining masonry work. And I would encourage everybody in the community to come and also to walk the labyrinth. So that's this Sunday, 10 a.m. at the church. All right. Staff briefing. Ms. Toole?
Good evening. So I'm providing my monthly water update to council. I wanted to note that in this graph you can see the trend that we are continuing with reductions. However, we are not currently meeting the informal 25% reduction goal that council had discussed. We are meeting all the state requirements at this time because we have implemented the 2 days a week of watering regulations along with the other list of regulations identified by the state. So you can see in October we experienced about a 20% reduction, and overall from June to October that equates to about a 23% overall reduction at this point. So even though we're falling short from the goal, if people continue to conserve through these next upcoming months, we may be able to meet the 25% reduction goal, but that does mean continued water conservation and reduction in usage. Bell Canyon is continuing to track just where it was in 2014. It'll be interesting to see if there's going to be a spike with this rain that we just had. And then providing an update about the WaterWise toolkits. I have been out along with additional staff and the mayor and several volunteers from various committees doing public outreach. We were at the Harvest Festival. We've been at both the primary school and the elementary school, and both of those outreach efforts were bilingual. I had bilingual staff with me doing outreach to different community members. The farmers market, City Hall. I've also done direct mail, Facebook, email, press releases, and I've given away about 375 toolkits. And so this is kind of a visual representation of every single person I've talked to. So every person I've asked to fill out a form, and so these are all the people that have gotten WaterWise toolkits. So I have about 125 toolkits left. I'm going to continue to do outreach. Even though it's raining, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to convince people to continue to conserve because it's wet, but it is still needed, and we are still working towards the 25% reduction target.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions of Ms. Toole? Just refresh me, is the target for the city of Napa 20% the state imposed target, do you know? If you don't, that's okay.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think it is 20%, and to my way of thinking, as long as we're doing as well or better than the city of Napa, we're doing fine, and I'm very pleased with the conservation efforts here in town. So I'm sure they'll continue. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
All right. Pardon? It's just a staff briefing. Thank you. Next is our consent items. We have a number of consent items, numbers 9 through 16. I will read them off, and if anybody wants one pulled, whether a member of the council or a member of the public, just say so when I get there, and I'll ask once again at the end. So, Mr. Ellsworth, did you have one at the beginning you want to pull? Number 10. Number 10. All right. So let's start with 9. Consideration of proposed approval of a resolution approving amendment number 1 with Cuesta Multicultural Consulting for a name change from Cuesta Multicultural Consulting to Yolanda Cuesta as an individual. 11. Consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving an agreement with Hansford Economic Consulting to provide a utility rate study for the water and wastewater rates for a total not to exceed the amount of $48,350. 12. Consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving a professional services agreement with Green Valley Consulting Engineering in the amount of $94,110 for the design of Holmes Tank Upgrade Capital Improvement Project W-86. 13. Second reading and proposed adoption by title only of the new Municipal Code Section 15.26, parenthesis, expedited permit process for small residential rooftop solar systems, and parenthesis, in order to comply with the state mandated requirements of AB 2188. 14. Consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving an employment agreement with Christine Crichton to serve as the city's library director. Hoorah. 15. Consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving of out-of-state travel for Sergeant Chris Hartley to attend FBI National Academy from January 17, 2016 through March 25, 2016. And 16. Consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving an agreement with the Lou Edwards Group to provide polling and public outreach related to a city charter and real property transfer tax for a total not to exceed the amount of $50,000. All right. So, does any member of the council wish to pull any others?
No.
All right. So at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve on consent items 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Move approval of those remaining items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Ms. Black?
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. So that takes us back to number 10. Staff report would be Ms. Phillips.
Thank you very much. This item is a request of the Downtown Napa Association. There's a representative here to respond to questions as well. It's basically to work with Assemblymember Dodd's office towards increasing the number of 47 liquor licenses. It's not type 47 licenses to Napa County restaurants. Basically, the cost of a liquor license is $12,000 if you were to be able to purchase it through the state. If you want to open a restaurant and have a liquor license, they're running about $400,000 a piece now. And so the Downtown Napa Association has initiated this. We did it here in Napa Valley once before. It would be 25 total additional licenses, 5 given out in a lottery format over a 5-year period to total the 25. And so as part of economic development, as part of supporting restaurants, by the way, restaurants are our #1 sales tax generator, and so certainly an important part of our community and in the sense of economic development. I put this item with a letter to support this initiative moving forward.
All right. Any initial questions of Ms. Phillips? I'll open the public hearing.
Jeff Ellsworth, 1434 Sylvaner. I'm just curious if have been any studies done on how many alcohol serving establishments can exist per capita or along a stretch of road before there's a rise in crime rates, rape, assault, theft, things of that nature. I think that we're in this county and maybe in this town entering sort of this gold rush of what's been called alcohol tourism. And have we looked at the DUI statistics compared to other regions? I recently saw a report in the Napa Valley Register that Napa Valley has an unusually high fatality from auto accidents. And we recently had an unfortunate alcohol tourism-related death in town, the woman who was crushed by the truck up on Main Street, and others around the county. So I think we need to analyze the direction we're going here to avoid an upward spiral in activity that compromises the health, welfare, and safety of our citizens, both in the city and county, of which we are also citizens. I think we're entering a period that could be a very dangerous trend, and it hasn't been looked at. We're seeing facilities all around the county that used to be wineries with very low visitation, now, in a sense, being wine bars all over the county. So I think that we just need to be very careful about how we step forward and what we're looking at now along these 2-lane roads. We have two lane roads that feed our town. And what is the capacity? So maybe I saw this recent thing in the Napa Valley Register about an unusually high rates here. So it might be time to start looking at that for the safety of the people who dwell here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Craig Smith. I was the aforementioned representative from the Downtown Napa Association. And I wanted to just talk briefly about this and then make myself available if you have any questions. We went down this path for the first time 8 years ago, working with then Assembly Member Janet Evans. And as Mrs. Phillips pointed out, at that point in time, the normally $12,000 licenses were going on the secondary market for $300,000 to $350,000. And we wanted to request an additional 15 licenses at that point, brought in via lottery, countywide, and at the rate of 5 a year for 3 years, in part to see how that goes. The Assembly member wanted us to meet with all of the law enforcement agencies in the Valley, which we did, and it did pass. Those licenses were issued. They were specifically for restaurants. The language is such that they will not go to bars, and they have to be for either existing businesses or businesses that have already requested a permit. They're not for speculators, and they're not for somebody to just buy so that they can end up turning around and selling it. In fact, you have to own it for 2 years before it can be sold, was the way the original language was set up. In going back this time around, as Ms. Phillips pointed out, they're now $400,000 to $450,000 on the secondary market. And we were requested by the business community to look at this again. Bill Dodd wanted us to do so only after talking to all the cities and gaining their support. We did talk to the Napa Police to see if there had been any negative impact in Napa as a result of these. And Chief Potter said that there hasn't been any discernible impact at all, that because it's been limited to restaurants, they are unable to measure anything that's happened as a result. So while I appreciate the concerns expressed, the intent of this is, again, strictly for restaurants and strictly as an economic engine and not as a way to just cavalierly introduce alcohol.
Okay. Any questions by council?
Have you done a study showing what the projected need is in the in Napa County, and particularly in St. Helena, with respect to the number of liquor licenses over the next 5 years?
I don't know exactly what it is today. I know that we did, 47 people applied for the first 15 licenses 8 years ago, and continued to apply as those were picked. There are more businesses requesting them now. There's more coming online in Napa, but I don't know exactly what those numbers are.
Can you talk about the what the theory is behind the seating limitation, restricting it down to, I think it's from 50 to 25? What's the theory there?
And that conversation came primarily from Calistoga and from Yountville, who said that 50 was just an unrealistic number for them. The venues that were open were more likely to be 25 or higher, so they requested that number.
Have you had any feedback from owners of existing restaurants who have made the investment with their liquor licenses in terms of preserving that investment? And what are folks saying who already have liquor licenses?
We haven't had any at all. Formally, informally, I had two guys say, well, I wish I'd known this. The other way to get around this one is to become a brewer. And so what's happening in restaurants now is they're buying that equipment. And two guys said, well, I wish I'd known this before we bought the equipment, but it's much needed, and both of them were supported. Both of those were Napa businesses. Pam Simpson could probably do a better job of speaking to St. Helena than I can, but...
Yeah. Great. I have a concern, and I'm not sure if you can address it. Maybe it's something for our chamber, our business community. I'm thinking, maybe I don't understand this fully, but my sense is that there is, St. Helena in particular is known as the wine center of the Napa Valley and, frankly, of the world. Mm-hmm. We do wine and we do restaurants, and it seems to me that there's a sense of competition between the sales of liquor and the promotion of wine and the benefits we have in our community to be a wine center of the world. How would you respond to that kind of an argument?
Well, I heard that addressed when we went this first go around from restaurant owners saying that they would have guests who would come in and would order a scotch with their dinner, and when they were told it wasn't available, they said, look, I've been drinking your wine all day. I'm going to drink your wine tomorrow. I'm going to go home with cases of it. I just want a scotch with my steak. So again, this isn't meant in any way to be competition. It's just as an economic engine to help those restaurants out, and again is limited to restaurants. We do not want to dilute the image of the wine country in any way.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. I think.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Any other public comment?
This is for the last consent item, number 16.
No. We're on number 10, so we'll get to number 16.
No, we pulled.
Pam Simpson with St. Helena's Chamber of Commerce. I don't think I have anything to add. I was just going to answer a
No,
question.
thank you. I would be appreciative of that.
We have, obviously with Harvest Table, was looking very hard. Harvest Table was looking very hard for a liquor license, and it was impossible to find in Napa County. Thus, they started looking at the opportunity of brewing beer, which is what most of them have to go for. We know that there's a liquor license available at the property that Rodney has, and he's had several offers on that. So there is a lot of need and there is a lot of want for this, and it is an economic driver. We figure that Harvest Table, without having their liquor license for the last few months, has probably lost somewhere between $70,000 and $150,000 worth of revenue because of the weddings, and that's probably $15,000 to $20,000 into the city for sales tax. So it is significant for them to have the option, and that's what it's really about, is people do come here for an experience. They are drinking wine all day. They are looking for something else, and so that's what we see.
Any feedback from restaurants who have liquor licenses who've spent a fair amount of money, obviously, over $300,000, maybe $400,000. Some of them have held those for a while. Mm-hmm. But anybody in the chamber or folks that you know who go, someone's going to pay $12,000 for something I had to pay $400,000 for. I don't know if you've heard that.
Well, I think
don't know
most
if
of
I've heard it either,
most
but
of them would have loved to have paid $12,000 for
Yeah.
it, and they do see it as. But again, this is going to be limited. There's only so many, so at some point, the secondary market's going to kick in again, and that's going to happen. However, most of the people who get into the restaurant business don't do it to get into to have that liquor license and use that as an asset to sell. It ends up being one, which is nice, but it's not a great business model to build your restaurant around. So I think most people, got into the restaurant for that, and that was an added benefit and an added asset.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anything that they, and it shouldn't be. This
Any
is-
feedback on the seating proposal, 25 seats?
Same thing. We agree with Yountville and Calistoga that this is that taking it down to 25 really means intimate boutique restaurants. We don't want to exclude them from this. If you've got and with the limited space we have in St. Helena for new restaurants, it's very possible that the next restaurant that comes up in St. Helena will only have 25 seats. It's 25, 30 seats instead of 50.
Really?
Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
we have.
Well, the investment, I'm thinking about the investment. I understand how restaurants operate. The investment of just getting a kitchen together is so
Right.
expensive
Right.
that
It's something the size of
for
a club.
25 people or 25 seats, it seems like I'm not sure if that works, but I'm not in the business, so you may know more than I do.
Right. Well, you look
Yeah.
at the size of Cook.
Yeah.
It's very small. So.
Have you heard of any businesses who happen to have won the lottery, so to speak, paid their $12,000, have the license but are not using it? Do you know of any of those? I thought they're like in the All Seasons in Calistoga, and they may have one, and I don't think they're using theirs. Are there others that you know
I
about?
think it's a use it or lose it kind of thing. I think if you don't use it, if you don't use it, it goes away. So it's something that you have to actually, and I think you report monthly to the state what your liquor sales have been and what you've been doing, and so I think it's pretty much a use it or lose it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Ms. Simpson. Any further public comment? I'll close the public comment and invite council discussion. Mr. White?
Well, I'm in favor of it. I don't think that there's any reason to oppose having our assembly person go and try and find or try and get 25 new liquor licenses for the county. I think it's going to be a benefit for, hopefully, for St. Helena also. So I'm in favor of the support letter.
All right, Mr. Dorian?
Well, I hadn't heard from at least two people. I haven't heard from at least two people. It seems like the reasons seem sound. It just seems doesn't seem like there's a lot of objective information to. I'm not opposed one way or for it or against it. It would be nice to have objective information in terms of the actual projected need. I guess my biggest concern is it detracting from our brand, our community's wine brand. We do wine and we do food, and I'm not sure if it's in our. Does it make sense for us to be promoting liquor? I know that the intention is not to have that competition, but I'm troubled by that. And I haven't really thought that one through yet, but that's the biggest concern I have, that Napa may have a different mission, but ours is wine and food, and I'd rather promote that than promote liquor. I drink liquor. I have no problem with it. I'm wondering if there really is a need or not. And I'm also concerned about those who've invested a lot of money and then have to have that value basically taken away from them. So I'm grappling with the issue. I don't have an answer one way or another.
Well, I think I endorse the comments of the vice mayor. As I see it, it's only going to impact St. Helena if someone up here at St. Helena wins the lottery. I mean, it's only 5 a year, spread over a number of years. So I don't think the impact on us is one way or the other is going to prove to be meaningful. I do think it's important to recognize that St. Helena is part of and not an island isolated from the rest of Napa County, and we should be supportive of what our sister cities want. It's pretty clear that Yountville and the city of Calistoga, the city of Napa, and perhaps American Canyon all feel that this is an appropriate request to be made of our state legislator. My only other minor technical comment, Cindy, is that with respect to the letter, the second paragraph should be Downtown Napa Association and not Downtown Business Association. We can correct that and fix that one tomorrow. But with that, the chair would entertain a motion to authorize, I guess, the mayor to send a supportive letter.
So moved.
Ms. Black?
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Doring?
No.
Okay. That takes us to the next removed consent item, item 16. Ms. Phillips.
So this item is a resolution approving an agreement with the Lou Edwards Group to provide polling and public outreach related to the city charter and real property transfer tax in an amount not to exceed $50,000. As part of the council's goal setting in February 2015 and confirmed in March 2015, the city council unanimously agreed to the 6 initiatives that staff was to work on for 2015. One of those was to begin work on assessing the opportunity for the city of St. Helena to become a charter city and pass a real property transfer tax. I brought the item back to council in September. We put money in the budget, but I just wanted to be sure, and so the council said again, yes, move forward on this initiative. So in September, staff issued a request for proposals. We received 3 proposals. We evaluated those proposals and select the Lou Edwards Group. They will begin working, if the contract is approved, begin working this month, work through the winter and early spring to be able to bring back the information, as there's a critical timeline in April 2016 for the council to determine if they want to move forward with a ballot measure. And so part of helping you make that decision is to identify the feelings of the voters and to determine what type of property transfer tax, if any, could be successful, and sort of this issue of becoming a charter city. And so this is normal course of business when a local government agency is going to put a measure on the ballot and it's unsure about its voter population's feelings about it. We feel this is a critical step towards providing council with information. And so that's, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no questions from council, let me open the public hearing. An open-minded member of the real estate industry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Daniel Sanchez. I'm with North Bay Association of Realtors. Actually, the first question was more of a genuine question. The city of St. Helena has a voter base in the last election, I think 1,800, and even in a presidential cycle, the likely voters are likely to be a little bit higher. But to do a telephone survey, if I'm remembering my polling class from grad school, I thought you needed 400, a sample size of 400 to do a telephone survey at least, and that'll give you the typical margin of error, 4.5%. But if you were to make the calls to do, and I assume it's by phone call, that would be about 20 to 25% take up of, that's 400 divided by 1,800, 400 divided by 2,000 or so. If assuming it is a telephone survey, that seems like an extraordinarily high take-up rate of respondents. And I ask this because I myself also wanted to get a poll done to see what voters in St. Helena thought about this issue. So that's the first point I wanted to make clarification on how you all intended to get assuming it's a telephone survey, a statistically valid telephone survey. And the second question is the second comment, is again reiterating our concern over this item, going down to the path of spending $50,000 on an issue that there is already organized opposition against, when the $50,000 could go to a much more useful cause. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanchez. Ms. Phillips, do you have anything to say in response?
Well, this is one of the reasons why we reach out to consultants who are experts in the field, and their proposal did include 300 respondents to the poll with a similar margin of error that was mentioned. that's what they said they were going to do. That's in their proposal, and so I turned to them as the experts, and that's what we're contracting for.
Any further council discussion on this item? I think we've been over it. We've set our course, and we hope people in the community really study our budget situation and look at the alternatives as well. You just can't abstractly oppose something unless you have a good alternative for us that's going to bring a similar amount of revenue. That's where we are, and certainly the real estate industry, I hope, will help. They oppose this, tell us where they would go to come up with a similar amount of revenue. I'll entertain a motion to approve this item.
Unless they're willing to pay the Lou Edwards Group the $50,000, maybe we can do a deal right now.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the resolution.
And second.
Ms. Black?
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. Okay, that takes us now to our normal calendar, or at least our non-consent calendar. So the first item is consideration and proposed approval of a resolution of an appeal of administrative decision denying reduction of charges for replacement of a water valve for Richard Cruz. And Ms. Mitz is the lead staff on this.
Do you mind if I just, for one moment, congratulate Chris Crichton on her appointment to library director?
Certainly.
I want to say congratulations, Chris.
Welcome aboard.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. This is an appeal to administrative decision denying a reduction of charges for replacement of a water valve by Mr. Cruz. On September 9th, City Clerk Black received a letter from Mr. Cruz requesting an appeal to an administrative decision denying a reduction in the cost of the replacement of a water valve. The discussion on this, the history, on July 7th, the city did receive notification of a broken water main valve located at 1276 Allen Avenue, which is Mr. Cruz's residence. City crews went to the home and found that the water valve handle was sheared off at the top, leaving no way to turn off the water. On July 7th, a temporary valve was installed, and then on July 10th, the city staff did install a permanent valve. But as a result of this, the timing of the broken water valve, the water consumption was noted in 2 different billing periods, but the total amount that was billed for the regular usage plus the broken valve was a little over $1,100. Mr. Cruz did complete an application for a leak adjustment, which was approved, and $167 was credited to his account. St. Helena Municipal Code does state that all water meters are the property of the city and that they shall be maintained by our city crews for any ordinary wear and tear, and the city is responsible for any ordinary wear and tear and done with the valves. But any replacements, repairs, or adjustments of a meter that are necessary as a result of negligence of the owner or occupant of any premises shall be charged and collected against the owner of the premises. On August 24th, the city did receive a letter from Van Winden's Landscaping explaining the series of events. The landscaping company was hired by Mr. Cruz to complete some landscaping for the property, and the landscaping organization did outline the series of events, and they did state that when they did have one of their main water lines that they were working on broke, and so the landscaping company actually went and tried to turn the water off themselves, and that's when they sheared off the valve on the city property. And on September 8th, the city staff, after receiving the landscaper's message, the city staff did send a letter to Mr. Cruz stating that we had received a letter from the landscaping company regarding the broken water valve, and we instructed Mr. Cruz that any communication regarding the adjustment or dispute would need to come from him directly, as the water account is set up in his name, and we don't deal with third-party vendors when it comes to disputes. On September 9th, the city received an appeal from Mr. Cruz to lower the cost of the water meter replacement. And then it is after receiving that, the request that the request for the water adjustment, we did deny it, and it was our determination that Mr. Cruz was responsible for the cost to replace the water valve because the necessary repair was a result of negligence on the part of the contractor that they hired. Fiscal impact, if you do decide to grant the appeal, it would be a maximum of $969.84, which is the cost of the water valve. So that would be the maximum that would be allowed if you determine to grant all or part of the appeal. It's staff's recommendation that that you do not grant the appeal because we do conclude that the cost to replace the water meter do fall in line with our municipal codes, and it is Mr. Cruz's responsibility. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any initial questions? All right, let me open the public hearing. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this? Any representative of Mr. Cruz or Mr. Cruz? I'll close the public hearing. So here we are. It's appropriate. We have 3 members of the City Council because typically in this country appeals are heard by 3 judge panels. And typically, or often, I found in a long experience with appellate panels, the junior member of the panel leads off. So Mr. Doring.
By age. I guess I do have a question or two. I don't want a lawyer. Unfortunately, I'm cursed by being a lawyer. And I read the statute, and I have some concerns about how the code is written. But I'm having a difficult time determining that Mr. Cruz is actually negligent. But before we get there, I'm wondering, does the city have records or a policy in terms of how often and when, if ever, it maintained this particular valve? Because it was sheared off, and I'm wondering, it was sheared off because of the way the tool was used, or because of the condition of the valve itself. I need a little bit more information there.
I'll divert that to our public works
Of course,
director.
I understand that. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Yeah, we don't have detailed records of exercising every meter valve, and typically we wouldn't unless there's a shut off or a turn on. It's not something that's normally done, so I really can't speak to the last time it was done or anything like that.
I assume they use a tool that wasn't the typical that T valve, that tool that the Public Works uses. I know.
Right. That's why we ask residents not to turn off the meters, because we have a special tool to do that. And given the age, it's important to use the right tools to turn the valves on and off. Yep.
So we don't really know what the condition of that valve is. I mean, I'm surprised that it's sheared off. That would take a lot of work to shear it off. So I'm not sure if that's something that the city is responsible for, or he is, or if we don't have that information, at least some question in my mind. Maybe not the entire amount of negligence, but a portion of the negligence. I don't know. That's a concern I have. And then, I have reservations about the code section. I think it could be a little clearer in terms of responsibility. So, leave it at that right now.
Mr. White?
I guess I have a similar question or a similar concern about, I've never heard of a valve being sheared off. And I don't even know how that could happen. You can tell me, though. I can
so
enlighten me.
Well, so I think maybe there's a terminology question here. First of all, it's not the valve, it's the handle.
Right.
So it's the top of the valve has a handle on it. It looks like it's a circle with a long flat, right, like a bar that you turn to turn it off. So it's not like a faucet handle. It's
No, I'm familiar with what they look like. It's,
right.
I just have
so
never heard.
So that can twist and become separated from the valve body, and that's what's happened.
Okay. And could that have happened? Could that have happened due to the valve being frozen?
Usually, what happens is they're using the wrong tool and not using an appropriate amount of care because they're not used to doing it all the time. You know, it's a homeowner or a landscaper, and they're in a hurry to get the water shut off, and it can break in the rush.
Okay.
Well, I think as I thought about this, of course, that wonderful Latin expression, res ipsa loquitur, came back to my mind. That's one of the first Latin expressions you learn in first year torts, at least when I went through it. The thing speaks for itself. It's negligence per se. Here we have an experienced contractor that has gone in and worked with these valves over the years. As the Public Works Director says, it's not uncommon, to my observation, to see landscapers and plumbers turn these valves on and off without consulting the city. And the fact that this one broke, to me, does not make the case that the homeowner was negligent or that his agent was negligent. As I read the statute, it says, are necessary as a result of the negligence of the owner. And to my way of thinking, it's up to the city to show that the homeowner was negligent, and I just don't see on this record. We can speculate as to what happened here. It's not a res ipsa loquitur situation, and I don't see the evidence that the homeowner was negligent, so I'm inclined to sustain the appeal. Now, let me see whether my argument has persuaded any of my council members.
Well, I think that was what I was getting at by the language of the code section. I think it's clear, someone at least could make the argument that the contractor's employee was negligent, but the owner, the code section says the owner or the occupant. So I think we've made a little bit of a stretch by saying that I agree with you, Mayor, basically, that I don't see where the owner has been negligent, and that's the way our code section is written. It doesn't say owner and owner's agents, unfortunately. So that's a little problematic. Again, we're cursed by lawyers here, sad to say, but I don't see any negligence on the part of the owner at all here. So I think you're right in that regard.
Mr. White? Flanked by lawyers.
I know. It's not fair. I mean, it would have been helpful for me to actually see a picture of what this valve looked like after being torqued completely off. I mean, I know that those are brass, right? I mean, the mechanism is brass, so they had to really tweak it to get it to shear off. And I would think that a normal person would have stopped at some point and not sheared that. I mean, it's a piece of brass that is 3/4 of an inch wide, and I mean, I can't even imagine how that could have been done. So, I mean, to be able to do that, I don't know if I would call it negligence or some other adjective to be able to do it. I don't know that I could find him negligent or not negligent with the little information that we have. So if it's a 2-to-1 anyway, it sounds like it's moot.
I would only say that I do regard Wyndham as the owner's agent, but I just don't see the record as containing enough evidence to prove that Wyndham was negligent. That's my problem here.
And I think going forward, I'd love to see, if something like this is going to come to us, that if staff thinks that it's some kind of negligence or bad practice from one of the customers or whatever, that there's more documentation taken so we can make a better determination. So.
All right. Any further discussion?
No.
Mr. Doring, would you make a motion?
Yeah, I move that we accept the appeal in its entirety.
Second. Ms. Black?
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
And the direction, we infer that the direction from that would be to adopt a resolution to modify the resolution that's in the packet to memorialize the council's direction by that motion.
Correct. In other words,
yes,
the owner gets the refund of $969.84.
And to
that's the bottom line.
Adopt a resolution accordingly.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. Next item, 18. Consideration and proposed approval of a resolution providing $10,000 in financial assistance to Community Action Napa Valley in support of Napa County's homeless shelter services. Ms. Phillips.
Thank you very much. So this item, when we look at homelessness in our communities, it really, we have to have, takes a community commitment and it takes a regional response. One city, one agency really can't be solely responsible. It takes a village when we look at individuals in our communities that need our support and need our assistance. And the city of St. Helena doesn't provide any type of social services, as do very few cities. That's left with the county to provide the services that individuals may need. And our homeless shelters are provided by a nonprofit, Community Action Napa Valley. And so with the winter months coming, also reading an article recently in the paper that Community Action Napa Valley had lost a significant amount of funding, and that Napa City and Napa County had stepped in and backfilled that funding. I started to look at our own community and how we can be part of the solution. Another change that's coming that's going to further expand that conversation is, for many years, what we've been trying to do in local government is provide the supportive services to help individuals who are homeless and then get them into housing. It's fairly well known that approximately 80% of the individuals who are homeless either have substance abuse issues or are mentally ill. And if you just provide them housing, what we found is they don't function well in that structured environment without the supportive services. And so we've been trying to provide supportive services and then get them into housing, or maybe doing that at the same time. And the Department of Housing and Urban Development has decided to switch the philosophy around, as there's a perception that that approach hasn't been working, and start focusing on housing first and then supportive services. And so this is really going to take a community effort, and we as cities in Napa Valley need to work well with our nonprofits, with the county, with the city, who have the shelters in their communities. We do not have a homeless shelter in our community. And so I thought it was important for St. Helena to take a leadership role, and so I wanted to provide you with this staff report and this opportunity. And although our funds are very tight, and we make very thoughtful decisions on how we spend our assigned general fund reserve, that we really sent a message to our community in Napa County, Napa City, and to our entire Napa Valley community that we think this is an important issue and that we want to be part of the solution and to make a small contribution, especially with these winter months coming, that could help Community Action Napa Valley. And so this item is a request to use $10,000 of the assigned general fund reserve and contribute that towards this organization. I did want to point out that as part of our contract that we have with the City of Napa for Housing Authority services, $2,000 of that is given over to Fair Housing Napa Valley, and another $2,000 is already a contribution to Community Action Napa Valley. So the city has been contributing, but this would be an opportunity to contribute a little bit more and start to be a leader in that conversation moving forward.
Any initial questions by council?
Just curious, have you had conversations with the other city managers, and do you think that the other, like Calistoga and Yountville, will be doing the same kind of contributions, or at least similar?
I have not, but I'm meeting with them this Friday and thought that I would talk about it.
Okay. I served on the Canby board for several years, so it's I know that Canby does great work with very limited resources in all kinds of areas with food and child care and housing, so I would support the approval of the resolution.
Let me open the public hearing. Does anybody wish to speak to this? Seeing none, Mr. White?
No, I'm totally in favor of this, and I think it's a small gesture that we can make. So I move to approve
Well,
but I think you need to.
I don't get a chance. Look,
Okay, that's enough.
I think it's a small gesture as well. I also think it's a crucial gesture. Therefore, I would accept a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. And that takes us to the final matter on our agenda, item 19. Consideration of proposed approval of a resolution providing City of St. Helena Sol Ed Benefit Corp. Solar Power Purchase Agreement, Notice of Termination of Power Purchase Agreement. That's a significant contractual issue.
It is.
There we go. Ms. Phillips.
All right. So walk you through a little bit of the history. So in August 2014, I believe it was my second council meeting, I brought this agreement forward to the City Council for approval. It's a very long and complicated agreement, but it boils down to SolEd installing 3 solar arrays at the water treatment plant, at the wastewater treatment plant, and at Wapo Park for the Stonebridge wells. There are obligations on the part of SolEd moving through this agreement, and I believe that one of my responsibilities as your city manager is to ensure that when we contract with organizations that they're delivering on what they promise to deliver. And so there are some milestones in this agreement, and so as I was monitoring the agreement, I found that some of the milestones, basically all of them, hadn't been met, and so a few things happened over the summer. I did get a notice from SolEd that they had finally conducted a site visit. So keep in mind that when we started this negotiations, I wasn't here, but they came out and they looked at 5 or 6 sites, determined the 3 that would work, and we signed an agreement committing to those 3 sites. They committed to provide solar arrays at those 3 sites. I got an email after they did a site visit indicating that it came to their attention that there could be Indian artifacts at the Wapo Park site and that they didn't feel it was a suitable site. That I thought was alarming because my staff had indicated that that information had been provided to them prior. And so as a company, when you're looking at sites and you're making a legal commitment to provide any kind of installation of something at a site, that one would do their due diligence, and that they agreed to do this and then determined that the same information they'd been provided prior now was keeping them from not being able to install at the site. They did offer for the city to take total, sole, complete responsibility, and they would happily install the solar arrays at the site, and I don't think that's appropriate, and so I declined that offer. And then continuing to review the agreement, I found that they really hadn't delivered on any of the initial things that they needed to deliver on. That included a financing term sheet. They hadn't been able to secure their financing, and an approval of any kind of construction agreement. And so really communications over the last year have been weak, and that for me is really concerning. This is a huge commitment on the part of the city. Although it's very exciting to be part of a solar program, it's not the only option, and I want to be sure that the company that we contract with can really deliver on these solar arrays. So I did contact them as part of the agreement. There's a meet and confer if we're dissatisfied or find that they're not in compliance with the agreement. We did meet on October 5th. We went through the areas that I thought that they had not met were not in compliance with the agreement. That meeting was held on, I contacted them on October 5th. We met on October 15th. We talked about their untimely performance. We talked about what steps they could take to remedy that. They were very positive. We had a long meeting. I think it was about an hour and a half. They said absolutely. They were going to have information to me within a day or 2, so that was October 15th. They also stated during that meeting that 2 things they would be delivering to me within a day or 2 would be a notice to proceed, which was for me then to sign to allow them to proceed, as well as a schedule. As of until yesterday, I'd received no communication, no contact with them. And so I had continued to move forward with my letter of termination to bring before the council for your consideration. You did receive a letter today. I received it about an hour or 2 before the meeting. It's been handed out and was also put on the website. That is from SolEd. Representatives are also in the audience if you have questions for them. But despite this new information, my recommendation continues to be that you terminate the agreement. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any initial questions? All right. Let me open the public hearing. Sure. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council and city manager. How are you? My name is David Kuhnhart. I'm president and CEO of SolEd Benefit Corp. With me here today is Candace McAllowitz, who is one of the principals of the financing company, with whom we've been working since the late spring, and with whom we closed on our financing 4 business days after our meeting on the 15th of October, which was what preempted our entire concentration during that time. Before I begin, and I do want Candace to speak for the money side of our partnership, I want to offer an apology to the city manager and to you for our failure to communicate adequately, obviously. If now, Ms. Phillips has a great reputation of representing you well as a tough and fair contract administrator, and I think that that's a great way to be treated, and we feel as though we've been treated with nothing but fair due process. I think that the telephone is a two-way instrument, and I would love to be able to have more two-way conversation, but it has, for the most part, been our failure to communicate and provide reassurance. I think you have the letter in front of you, and would like to say that, and I don't think it's really useful to go back through time. We could if you wish. Our partner when we came here a year ago was Synetric, and Synetric decided about a month after we were here to retreat from the commercial solar business. They're still apparently doing residential, but they're not doing any commercial. We didn't learn that until shortly before Christmas. The financing partner that we had beginning in November of last year, in a timely fashion, experienced a reorg and restructuring in the spring, and we needed to find a new builder. Fortunately, we found a new, very much deeper and stronger construction team in Lend-Lease Americas. They have many billions of dollars of business. They've been working with the U.S. Defense Department for over 50 years. They're the biggest builder of solar for the U.S. military housing in the United States, for example, but they also do large and small and complex installs all over. We did find, to my pleasure, we found C2SSG, and Candace represents them. I think she can tell you a little bit about who C2SSG is, a private equity investor in solar, and I would let her do that and also introduce an additional topic to deal with the situation of dropping out the 25% of our program, which is represented by WAPO Park. Go ahead.
Please.
Unrehearsed, by the way.
Okay. All right. Please state your name.
I'm Candace McAllowitz. I'm with C2 Special Situations Group. I hail from New York today to be here. C2 is a solar investment firm. Our focus is specifically on opportunities such as this. To give you an example, we have built a 1.5 megawatt project with the LADWP County. We did a project in Massachusetts with the Massachusetts Development Finance Authority, and as most recently with SOLED as the development team, we just constructed the Old Adobe School District in Petaluma, which was similar to this project, 4 sites totaling 461 kW. So this is exactly within our wheelhouse, and what we founded to do was to focus on opportunities like this and to help bring transactions to fruition. When we started engaging on the Old Adobe project, for example, we came into the project in June. By July, we had started construction, and in October, they were operational. So when we commit to putting not only our financing behind it, but also the personal resources to push the projects through as need be. From a financing standpoint, we're providing the full capital stack for the project, any development expenses, construction financing that's needed to bring the projects to commercial operation. For this project, with the schedule, we're anticipating that to be June of 2016.
Okay.
And I would further add that we are with them advancing with all 18 sites, 9 agencies in the SEED PV program, of which yours is a modest part. That's from Cloverdale all the way to Mill Valley, 6 sites in San Rafael. So it's not just these that we're advancing with. I do want to take just a tiny bit of exception to only one piece of Ms. Phillips' explanation, which was The selection process, 5 to 3 sites, was primarily by the independent consultants Optiny and others, not by us. We were selected competitively after those 5 sites were evaluated and the 3 sites were selected, and we really had no prior knowledge of the reputed Indian artifacts and burial remains that may be in the Wapo Park Stonebridge Wells site until we conducted the site visit with the Director of Parks in the springtime of this year. And then we discovered that what Candace's thought was today is if there's another site that you have that could accommodate a similar amount of solar, about 120 kW, we are absolutely willing to substitute another site of that size or bigger, or add 2 sites or 3 sites, whatever more that you may have. It would not be advantageous to anybody if they are smaller than that one, but if there are others that you would want to substitute in to make the program bigger and increase your savings, that would be absolutely desirable from our perspective and from the funding's perspective. I do want to just point out the last piece of this overall. Candace has already said that we are together negotiating with the builder, who is fully bondable, fully prepared to do prevailing wage work, and very deeply experienced at this work. They are eager to start the actual geotech investigation starting now, and get moving on that. We think that all of the engineering could be done by January, and then the construction commenced as soon as we are dewatered on the wastewater treatment site. I think probably the hillside at the water treatment plant would be fine to work on, and any other site that you might offer forward. And remember that in this PPA arrangement, there is zero capital investment. There is the time, the professional time of the city staff, which is very valuable, but there's zero capital investment by the city of St. Helena called for. And also no signature on a debt instrument. So there's no weight on your books for doing this. It is a service agreement for 20 years that says, here's the rate you start at, which should save money in the first year, and it only increases by 2.5% for 15 years, and then it goes down by 10% for the next 5 years. Option to this in the city's hands to continue or not, and option to buy at 3 different points the system at the only thing that the tax code allows us to offer, fair market value. And that the only other piece is that I would say the primary incentive that's remaining in this is the federal tax incentive, and Candace's partners will be utilizing that and delivering the benefit of that through the price of energy to you. That 30% investment tax credit goes away if nothing else changes in Congress between now and then at the end of December of 2016. And so it would be still timely for the city to undertake this and move forward as the other 8 agencies in the SEED program are doing.
All right.
And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions by council members? Thank you very much. Any other public comment? I'll close the public hearing, and I will invite council discussion. And maybe this time the mayor will exercise his prerogative and go first. Clearly, based upon what I hear, if this were to go forward, there would have to be a substantial renegotiation of the contract. I accept the city's manager's recommendation that given the history here, unfortunately, the proper move for the city is to terminate the contract. I have one legal question for Mr. Brown. I'm very much an objective theory of contracts guy. And as I read the staff report, as I've read the staff, the contract, Wapo Park, was a material term, not a condition, but a term of the contract. In other words, there were 3 places that they were supposed to put in these facilities, and that included Wapo Park. Wapo Park can't move forward The question is, to me, is why isn't that a material breach giving rise to a right of rescission as an additional basis for ending this contract?
My first answer is that, or my first response is that I too I share your view of contracts generally. My colleague in the firm, who's a public contract expert, Stephen Calley, has taken the lead in working with the city manager on this. My understanding is that he shares your view of that.
Wonderful.
But I'm not fully confident of that answer. Setting that aside for a moment, however, the and I think I would defer to the manager as to your discussions with Mr. Calley about that. But as you'll see from the staff report, there are several other bases grounded in the contract that are giving rise to the conclusion that, as a matter of policy, the city may terminate the agreement.
Right.
In other words, conditions that have not been satisfied as opposed to a material term.
Right, and my only question is, in the context of a termination letter, whether the rescission ground ought to be asserted and the failure to meet conditions ought to be alternatively asserted. One assumes the contract, in effect, is rescinded. The other assumes it isn't rescinded, but there's a failure of performance due to failure to meet conditions. To me, in a termination letter, you might want to assert both. That's my only point.
And that makes sense. And and I will follow up on that with Mr. Calley of my office, if that's the council's direction.
All right. Further comment by members of the council?
Not being an attorney, so I'll go from a layperson's point of view, is that I'm disappointed on the performance and how long it's taken to get to this point, to where now all of a sudden it seems like you could perform. I mean, I didn't even know this was going to be on the agenda until last week, but I was starting to think, I was going to ask about this anyway, and I defer to our city manager. I think she's done a great job of pulling all the information together and seeing that working with Soul Ed has been a challenge, and I'm for rescinding this contract and looking at other alternatives at this point. So.
Mr. Doring?
Yeah, I generally understand the issue of loss of confidence and risk going forward. As a lawyer, obviously, I'm looking at that. I take issue a little bit. I generally agree with the mayor's observations about the rescission elements. It may be more complicated than that, but I think that we have enough information here to terminate this. I frankly would encourage us to sit down with Soul Ed and see if we can do something else here. I would hate to have this project. I think we have to keep in mind what is the mission of the city and what is the ultimate goal. Lack of confidence and performance is a big issue for any city, but this seems like a very worthwhile project to pursue if we can make it happen in a renegotiated contract. And I'd be interested, having this come back and seeing if there's an alternative site that we've thought about. If not, is there an adjustment that can be made to this contract to make it still work for the city? So I would accept the manager's recommendation that we approve this resolution, but with the hope that we can maybe have some kind of a restructured reset period.
Well, my response to that would be, let's approve this resolution and let the future decide what the future holds. Because there may be other alternatives. It may be that the company can convince the city that it is solidly able to move forward at this point. But that's serious due diligence after what's happened to us, and it's not something where I feel we can responsibly act on the basis of representations this evening, even though I welcome them. And then I would ask that the council, if appropriate, add the additional ground to the termination letter. So at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution with the addition that council will look at the rescission issue and, if appropriate, put that in the termination letter.
So moved.
Ms. Black?
We need a second.
Oh.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Vice Mayor White.
Yes.
Councilmember Doring.
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. Much appreciated.